Thank you very much, Ms. Kozlowska. I'm absolutely delighted to be with you this morning or this afternoon in this session with you in Poland and in neighboring countries, as well as with my two students who are U.S. students. They are in the Juris Doctor program, the J.D. program at Indiana University McKinney School of Law, but they are both doing external internships in different countries. One student is in Bangkok, Thailand. That's Mr. Christopher Dabrowski, and he's going to be sharing a little bit about his experience as a law student. And we have one student, Mr. Kode Mitzavelt, who's in Nicosia, Cyprus, doing another external project, an internship. One of them is working on refugee issues, and the other is working on extradition and death penalty issues. But we're here to talk about U.S. legal education for students from Poland and from neighboring countries. Now, what is U.S. legal education and what sort of opportunities are presented for you if you do have the interest in coming to the United States for that purpose? So we have a presentation that's in PowerPoint format, and I will walk through it. We will have interventions by my two students, but I hope that we will have interventions, questions, comments from you. This is a presentation for you to provide information to you so that you might be better informed about opportunities. And we encourage you to ask questions, to offer comments. Our two students will be monitoring the chat room. I will not be. If you do choose to speak up, I will hear you. And I encourage you to do so, to either communicate via chat or communicate via voice so that we can address any and all concerns that you have about the possibility of your coming to the United States to study law. Okay, so this presentation will be somewhat brief on the one hand, but on the other hand, materials from it will be available so that you will be able to dig more deeply into the subject area as we proceed. And my students and I will be available offline via email or other forms of communication if you have questions that are not addressed immediately in this presentation. But we're going to cover why earn a law degree in the United States. We'll talk about the U.S. legal education system, as well as the U.S. Legal system itself. The Master of Laws degree, LLM, that's the principal law degree that overseas students earn when they come to the United States. We'll talk about how to get admitted, the application process, what are the requirements, whether you want to specialize in a particular area of law in the United States, how to pay for the law degree in the United States, the visa process, and the Fulbright Commission in Poland and Education USA, State Department, affiliate network groups in the different countries will offer better advice than I can on those subjects because they are the individuals and groups that facilitate visas, but we will offer some basic information. And then working in the United States after you receive your law degree, we have bar exams, and which we'll talk about. Optional practical training, OPT, if you want to study for 1 year at a law school in the United States, and then stay for an additional year and work for a law firm, for an academic institution, for a corporation, you may be able to do that through this OPT process. We have a few miscellaneous topics to share with you, and then we'll talk about the next degree, the Doctor of Jurisprudential Sciences, J.S.D, S.J.D, it's called different things. It's the PhD equivalent. And then we'll talk about the J.D degree, which is the basic law degree that U.S. students acquire. Our two students online today are in the J.D program. They're not in the LLM or the S.J.D program. And we'll talk about differences because if you do come to the United States, you'll need to choose which degree, and they can offer some insights about their experiences in the J.D program. Other U.S. law degrees and study opportunities, a couple of things that law schools will not tell you before you enroll. And then we'll talk about human rights. That's my principal subject area, international law, international human rights law. And I'll talk about how that relates to international legal education. Now, if I were with you in in Poland or in Ukraine or in the Czech Republic, wherever you happen to be, I would ask you to tell me directly, why do you want a US law degree? And I would suspect that each person in the room would have a slightly different answer. I'm not going to ask to take a poll on this question online, but I think that some of you may be thinking, well, I want a US law degree so that I can come back to my home country and work for US companies that are doing business in my home country. Or maybe I want to stay in the United States and be a lawyer for companies from my home country that are doing business in the United States. Or maybe I want to work for the European Union or for the United Nations or for a refugee organization. So there are many different reasons why you may want a law degree in the United States. And so I ask you to think about those and ask, what do you hope to accomplish with your degree? Because that's going to help determine your path. What are your expectations? And are your expectations reasonable when it comes to choosing a school? Okay, so in the United States, there are many, many questions to answer. In the United States, there are over 160 schools that offer very solid opportunities in the Master of Laws arena. And the LLM, again, that's going to be the principal law degree that overseas students earn when they come to the United States. Just all over, just so many different stripes, so many different types of law schools. So how do I choose which one is going to be for me? I think if you ask these questions and answer them, will you receive a high quality education? Will the school meet your academic needs? Will it help you reach your professional goals, whatever they may be, whether it's at the UN, the European Union, working for a refugee organization, or working for a law firm? What about finances? Some schools are far more expensive than others. Will your reasonable expectations be met? Whether your human rights will be protected? So I try to encourage incoming students not to ask which school is the best school, but to ask which school is the best school for you, because the best school for one student may not be the best school for another student. So please be discerning in your thoughts about which school to choose. So we have 3 basic law degrees. I've mentioned them already. The J.D. degree, which is the basic degree for domestic US students, and I'll explain a little bit more about that later. Then we have the PhD level degree, which most international students do not seek and which most US students do not seek. And then we have the LLM students, LLM programs, which that degree is received by, I would say, 98% of our international students who come to the US to study law. Requirements, and again, please feel free to stop at any point to ask questions. You can send a chat question to the students. You don't even have to send it to me. Send it to Mr. Dabrowski or Mr. Mitzelfeld, and they can answer, or they can ask me to answer. So ordinarily, you would need a law, in order to qualify for an LLM, you would first need a law degree from your home country. And I think I saw in the chats that some of you are in a law program in Poland, maybe in some other places. I think one person's in high school, and you might be able to qualify for an LLM program after you receive your first law degree. So you need that first law degree. You need to have solid academic achievement, and which you would expect from any program. So you would need to provide your transcripts as part of the application process, any diplomas that you might have, graduation certificates, and then reference letters from professors with whom you have taken courses that you've done outside projects with. So I encourage you to get to know people who will be able to speak on your behalf professionally and academically, because letters from those individuals will be necessary as part of the LLM application. And then English language competency for law degree programs in the United States. Now, thank you very much for pointing out that this book, the LLM Roadmap book, is physically, at least one copy is physically located at the Education USA Advising Center in Warsaw. because if you did not have one, I would have brought one when I come on my next visit. But in that book, on page 51, you can see kind of a schematic of different paths to law degrees in the United States. Obviously, you're not going to be able to read this slide right now, but there's a place where you can look to get an idea of where you are, where you'd want to be, and how to get there. Again, following this schematic, page 51 of that book. So to qualify for admission to an LLM program, you do not need to take one of these admissions tests that you might have heard about, the law school admissions test or the graduate record exam. It's simply not required. What is required is a personal statement or an essay, recommendation letters, transcripts, a CV, a resume, kind of a list of your activities, experiences, accomplishments, a financial statement, point number 5, because the schools want to know that you will be able to pay the tuition, the fees. But in point number 6, they want financial statements because they want to know whether you are eligible for scholarships. And scholarships are extremely important because there are so many students from around the world who want to come to the United States, but they need some form of financial assistance. So to qualify for the scholarships and et cetera, one needs to provide financial statements to show the schools what your means are. Personal interviews, certainly after COVID, are not required, but they weren't even required before that. So you can apply to the schools without physically having to go visit or do even remote interviews. There's a small fee, and then evidence of your English language abilities. Now, this is a tricky one for non-US students, and perhaps Mr. Dabrowski or Mr. Mitzfeld can address this issue. I think in the United States, it's just not so difficult for US students to talk about themselves, to brag about themselves, to write a personal statement that goes to the heart of who they are, what their goals are, how they believe that they are an excellent candidate for admission to a particular program. But that may not be that easy for a non-US student to write an essay about how great I am and how the school would be making a serious mistake if they didn't admit me. And I think that when it comes time for you to write your personal statements, I would encourage you to be in contact with students like Mr. Dabrowski or Mr. Mitzfeld, or with your Education USA advisors, with people who have had experience in the United States who can share with you kind of insights that may not come naturally for you. Ask other people for advice as you write these personal statements, because I can assure you that law schools depend upon those when they don't have the benefit of sitting and chatting with you face to face. And because you haven't come to visit, they're not doing Zoom interviews, and they want to know who you are, what makes you tick. You have to be able to communicate that to them. Now, the next couple of slides, I will just breeze through and just tell you that these days in the United States, there is a group called the Law Schools Admissions Council, and they work as to help funnel applications from students from 190 countries into the 160 or 170 schools. So it acts as kind of a clearinghouse where some schools do not accept applications directly to the school. The schools will tell applicants, submit your application to the Law School Admissions Council. The Law School Admissions Council is collecting applications from students to all the different schools, or most of the different schools, and the Law School Admissions Council, LSAC, will send your application to me. So if you're interested in applying to 10 schools, you would only need to submit one application to the LSAC and then tell the LSAC, please submit my application to these 10 schools, and they will do that. So the next few slides are about that process. But for now, all you need to know is that there is a way to streamline your applications. You choose the schools that you want to attend. You submit your application to LSAC and tell LSAC to farm out your application to those 5 or 10 or 1 school. So that's a rather convenient process. So once you're admitted, these are things you need to know about the requirements. Most schools require 2 semesters, and ordinarily we have a fall semester called autumn. It runs August, September through December. And then we have a second semester that is in the US spring, winter, spring, January, May, June. And most people finish their degree in that 9 or 10 month period. The LLM is only a 1-year program, and it's done again in 2 semesters ordinarily. And I just pulled up this map this morning, so you can see this one happens to be September through June, or it could be August through May. So you'd have about 3 months of classes, then you'd have a winter break. You come back and have another 3 months of classes plus exams, and that would be the end of your year. Those little blue boxes are holidays. We just had a holiday in the United States yesterday, Juneteenth, or 2 days ago, Juneteenth, celebrating the announcement to slaves back in 1865 that they were no longer enslaved. So that's a bit of history for you. And this is the first full year that that holiday has been celebrated in the United States. But there are many other holidays that where students are given days off from school. Courses, ordinarily 24 credits. That would be 8 to 10 courses. And some courses are exclusively for the international students. And some courses are more general, and they offer you an opportunity to really delve in deeply in a specialized way to courses that interest you. Now, if you are coming to the US to study law because you want to gain specialized knowledge and expertise in a particular area, here is where you would acquire that expertise by taking those specialized courses in tax law or international law or refugee law or oil and gas law or genomics. Any number of subject areas you can focus on in your LLM program. And if you want to stay in the US and practice law after, you might think about that before you join a law school, because some entryways into legal practice in the United States for international students require those students to take specific courses in their LLM program. So let's say, for example, if you want to sit and take the bar exam in the state of New York, New York requires that during your LLM program that you take specific courses. So if you want to sit for the New York bar, you should know that before you join the LLM program so that you can be certain that you take those courses that will qualify you for eligibility to sit for the New York bar. I think it's getting close to time for at least my 2 students to chat. And I will ask them to share their experiences in just a moment. But this slide just talks about the different types of LLM programs. These days, we do have, especially after COVID, there are more and more online opportunities, virtual opportunities for students to receive US law degrees. Not every school has such a program, but some schools do. So if that's something that interests you, now is a good time to do that. And here we are. Maybe students, Mr. Dabrowski or Mr. Lucas or Mitzefeld can talk about this from their perspective, because my experience working overseas in various places where I've taught courses, and when students come to the US, they tell me that they're not used to the professor standing in the front of the classroom, engaging the students in discussions. where the professor asks the students a question and the students answer, and then the students communicate between and among themselves and then with the students. So there's a dialogue in the classroom. I think overseas, maybe in Poland or in Ukraine or elsewhere where our students are from, are you more used to kind of the professor lecturing, or are you used to this process called the Socratic method, where the teacher engages you in discussion, as I am about to do with Mr. Mitzelfeld? Can you join me for just about 15 seconds and maybe address the issue of Socratic versus lecture? And how do you feel when professors call on you, as I'm doing right now?
Yeah, so the Socratic method has to do with, as Professor Edwards just stated, it has to do with the professor, rather than explaining to you what the content was, they will ask you questions and have you explain the content back to them. So it demonstrates a more in-depth understanding than just sitting and listening and taking notes. I personally appreciate the Socratic method. I've always been somebody to engage with the professor even when they're lecturing. So to have an invitation to do so, I've always favored, but I know even in the US, I know there's a lot of students who are unfamiliar with it and generally, do not prefer it. But I think it's a lot better in terms of concreting your own understanding and making sure you have a more comprehensive as well understanding and a better relationship with the professor.
Great. Yeah, you weren't nervous when I called on you, were you?
No, I'm always a little nervous, but that was about normal, par for the course.
Good. Okay. So hands-on experiences, that's something that I value as a professor who is very interested in kind of lecturing, but perhaps even more so in our students gaining experiential exposure, where they step outside of the traditional classroom and do projects. And as I mentioned, Mr. Mitzelfeld and Mr. Dabrowski are doing hands-on projects in 2 different parts of the world as part of their academic program. And some LLM programs in the United States do provide opportunities for LLM students to do work outside of the classroom, to work with professors on projects involving the United Nations, Guantanamo Bay in the case of Indiana University and others. And maybe Mr. Dabrowski, can you talk about experiential experiences that you are having, just for 30 seconds, in Bangkok, Thailand now, working on death penalty issues and extradition issues with clients from different countries for the summer?
So some of the experiences that I was having was I would actually go to these Thai courts, mainly because you would just be hearing the trial. It was great info just to understand how trial would be having testimony. It's kind of like what you kind of learn on that. So can you repeat the question about my experiences?
Yeah, can you talk about the difference between learning in the classroom and learning when you're out in the field?
Oh, it just has like a sense of kind of realism. You're meeting these clients. You're really looking up the case law to apply on your own case. You're really going out there for the research to understand the ins and outs for your case and what can you use to better help your case. There's so much that goes on to this that kind of doesn't happen in a classroom. When you're really interesting, it's really in depth what happens.
Okay, great, thank you. Yes, I think over the years, I think our students have generally, noted, marked differences between sitting in a classroom and being lectured to versus going in prisons, as Mr. Dabrowski did a couple of times in Bangkok, and working with real clients who have real issues. Okay, legal analysis, research and writing. I think most schools have programs that teach you this. It's critically important. Communication, lawyers communicating with their clients, with the courts, with opposing counsel. And I think probably all schools have great legal analysis, research and writing programs. But I think the ones that do really, really well are the ones that really force the students to do the work, to do the research and write the memos, because that's what you're going to be doing when you enter the real world. So it's best to get high quality education in those areas beforehand. Theses. Some schools offer the opportunity for students to write a thesis as part of their LLM program. Some schools don't permit theses. And why is it important to know this? And it's important for a couple of reasons. If you're interested in receiving a higher degree, maybe doing an S.J.D. or a PhD, then I think it's really important to do an LLM thesis where you do concentrated research in an area, and you can use that thesis perhaps as the basis for your proposal, dissertation-wise, for an advanced degree. If you want to become a law professor, I think doing theses is really a good idea. If you want to do an S.J.D. later, doing a thesis is a really good idea. So many skills are available for you to learn. You'll have plenty of opportunities for those. Specializing, I think a lot of students come to the United States to gain special expertise in a particular area. And there are over 100 different LLM specializations in the US. If you want expertise in banking law or energy law, trade law, corporate finance, trial advocacy, so many different opportunities are available for you in so many different areas. So, I mean, I think that's just an excellent reason to come to the US. And you will become, the resident expert in US real estate law. That might be important if you are in, let's say, in Poland, and your Polish client is interested in investing in real estate in the United States. Well, how many lawyers in Poland have expertise in real estate law in the United States? How many have an LLM that specializes in real estate law or in biotechnology or in corporate finance to satisfy the needs of your clients back at home? Or if you are in the US and you have a concentration in real estate law, you might, or in biotechnology or in corporate finance, you might have a Polish client who's doing business in the United States, who could use your services in the United States. You might want to stay in the United States to service those clients, or maybe a US client that's doing business in your home country. How much will it cost? How are you going to pay for it? Critically important issues. The costs are high. Traveling to the US, tuition and books, insurance, housing, food, having a little bit of fun, not too much, but a little bit, etc. And the cost varies. It does add up. Some cities are more expensive than other cities. Some schools are more expensive than other schools. Some schools offer scholarships. Some schools don't. So tuition, and these are US dollars last year. You can see some are higher than others. And that's just tuition, just the cost of tuition. And then when you add to that, like the housing costs and fees and books, et cetera, it can be quite high. But there are scholarships, there are grants available. And if those financial issues are important to you, you can explore these. There's some resources are listed in the book that you now know is physically at the Education USA Advising Center, at least the one in Warsaw. Maybe when I come to Poland, I can bring some other copies for other Education USA centers. But there are scholarships available for women, for persons with disabilities, within the US government, private websites, you can find information. There are many, many, many nationality-based. You can look to see whether there are any scholarships available for people in your region, refugees, people seeking asylum, people who are internally displaced, people who are externally displaced. I think particularly now, schools in the US are very open to providing assistance. Fulbright, I won't talk about this because this particular presentation is being facilitated by the Fulbright Commission. and they are experts in their own work. This is one that's great for women. LLM Fellows offers a fair amount of resources for them. Students work part-time. LLM students may work part-time and earn some extra money on campus as research assistants, library assistants, tutors, even a language tutor, etc. The visa process you'll learn about through the Education USA Advising Center, through the Fulbright Commission, through the U.S. Embassy, U.S. consulates in your home countries. And so I won't talk about those. Now, I know that some students are interested in coming to the U.S. and sitting for a bar exam and staying in the United States, and that certainly is possible. We have overseas students who do that every year. Here's a resource for you, a comprehensive guide to bar admission requirements. It's available through this website, and you can find, oh, by the way, a PDF of this presentation is going to be circulated, passed on to Ms. Koslowska at the Education USA Advising Center, and perhaps she'll make it available to all of the participants today. So you don't need to worry about taking copious notes about what was that website that Professor Edwards mentioned. You'll be able to find that on the PDF, and you'll be able to watch the YouTube video again if you should want. There are opportunities for you to stay an extra year or to stay even longer, depending on what sort of permissions you get. You can stay in the United States. You don't have a right to work in the United States after your degree, but there are opportunities under some circumstances, and there are ways to find jobs. I list out some in the book, but there are many ways for you to find a position either during your academic year in the United States or after you finish. What else to expect in LLM programs? Student organizations. I know that Mr. Mitzefeld, Mr. Dabrowski, maybe they're members of different student organizations. You can join. It's a great way to meet people, to gain further expertise and insights, to participate in their projects. Highly recommended. Participate in those activities, gain experiences, gain exposures, learn about U.S. culture, go on field trips, etc. Participate. Social events that are organized by the school are great, but professional events, I think many schools do offer these. If you're choosing between and among schools, talk with students who are there, students from your home country who have studied at those schools, and ask them about opportunities for them to meet other people, to meet Americans, to meet students from other countries, to interact with their professors, with local judges, with prosecutors, with defense counsel, with corporate counsel, etc. Those experiences, which may not be so readily available in your home countries when you're in a law degree program, but they can be available at law faculties in the United States, where you're not just sitting in a classroom, but you're gaining experience and exposure outside. Okay, we're going to wrap up in just a moment, but I'm going to ask you to consider again, if you're thinking about choosing a school, a program in the United States, what are you going to consider? You're going to ask, will you receive a high quality education? What are your academic needs? Subject wise, are you going to choose a school based on the reputation of the school, or based upon whether that school offers the banking law or the real estate law expertise that you want? What are your professional goals, meeting financial goals? What are your reasonable expectations? Will they be met? Will your human rights be protected? Will you feel comfortable in a school that sits in the tropic, like in Hawaii, for example? We have a law school, or that's in the frigid cold of Chicago. You may not feel comfortable in a big city, but you might feel comfortable in a smaller city. So there are lots of things to consider. What is the best school for you? That's important. And we have them all over the United States, every state except for Alaska has at least one law school. Alaska has no law schools. Every other state, all other states have at least one. Remember, your goal is not to find the best school. The goal is to find the best school for you. Human rights, I can't not talk about it because there in the past, well, I'll describe the phenomenon. There were some schools that were very, very keen on bringing international students, charging them high tuitions, but not using that money for the LLM students. They were diverting those funds to other programs. And those were called cash cow schools, where the money is not used for the LLM program. And then we had kind of diploma mill a phenomenon where essentially anybody who had $30,000 or $50,000 could just send it over to the school, and the school would send them a degree, where the students were not interested in learning and the schools were not interested in providing an education. I don't think that this phenomenon is prevalent these days, but I think aspects of it could be in the minds of some. So, make sure that you choose a school that has adequate resources that they're using for the LLM program, and that they are providing you with the education that you so rightly deserve. And so we're going to wrap up. You can have a look at these different bills of rights for students. Some countries like Australia has a bill of rights, which I just flashed through, for international students to try to help ensure that international students who go to Australia are provided what one would expect for them to be provided. J.S.D, if you want to do an advanced degree, these are the requirements. If you want to do a J.D, a Juris Doctor degree, here are the requirements. Again, most are doing the LLM program. So those are going to be the ones that are primarily a focus, or maybe you want to do a joint degree. Okay, so more information. There are more information sources available for you. And you can find these links, these references again in the PDF. Communicate, ask questions. Alumni Association, here's the book. Join the ranks of students from every country of the world that have come to the US to study law. You won't be the first, you won't be the last. There's no such thing as a silly question. Please ask questions, ask more questions, ask even more questions. And I'll stop now and let you ask questions.